Well, hello. How is everyone out there? Oh boy, it looks like fall is coming up upon us pretty quickly. I didn't get a chance to get out today, so what I decided to do was stay in and do a vlog. I had the idea of maybe bringing up a few of my favorite images that I've taken over the last year, and I thought that I'd share those with you and take you through the basic process of what my mindset was and the process of some of the editing that I did with those images. As we know, photography is subjective, and some people will like the images. Unfortunately, some people won't. But I've gotten to the point where I really don't think too much about what people think. It's more a matter of doing what pleases you. And once you're happy with the image is complete. So it is what it is at that point. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the images, and well, let's get to it right now, okay? All right, here we are. Okay, this image was taken earlier in the year, probably around February, if I'm correct. This is in Virginia, along the James River, and this is the James River train bridge. It's a place I've been to a couple of times. And the photographic opportunities tend to vary depending upon the time of year. Of course, you can see it's a very nice landscape here. And I got here in the morning. This was probably around 7:30 in the morning. It was a bit overcast, but I thought I got a pretty good shot here. This was just before the sun just peeked up above the trees. Okay, the settings for this shot were ISO 400, 1/5 of a second at ISO 64. And this is actually one of my favorite shots that I've taken this year. It's not one of the greatest, but it's a shot I like. It shows a pretty good amount of detail. This was actually taken with the Nikon D810, and I'm relatively happy with it. It has a reasonable amount of color, but I kind of desaturated it just a bit and cooled it off with the color balance slider in the Lightroom. Okay. All right, this next shot is one that I probably took about maybe 6 weeks ago. It's at a place called East End Cemetery. It was a pretty overcast day, and I was getting pretty discouraged with some of the photographic opportunities. Anyway, as I was leaving, the sun peeked out just a little bit. Actually, probably the clouds got pretty thin, and the illumination was incredibly soft and even over the entire area. And I pulled out the camera quickly and got this shot. As you can see, it's a fallen tree, and it's not anything special, but the lighting I thought was just incredible, the way that it illuminated the entire area. This was actually shot with a Nikon D750 at f-stop 11, 2-second exposure at at ISO 100. I processed it obviously in Lightroom, and I enhanced the greens a bit. I'm one of those people that's pretty heavy on saturation. I like to exaggerate things just a little bit. I know a lot of photographers like to go for a more realistic look, but I like heavy saturation. So I saturated this quite a bit. I brought the sliders up, the HSL sliders up a bit, and enhanced the greens a bit and the yellows. And on the wood itself, enhanced the hue on the wood. And it's one of those images that I'm pretty happy with. I also gave it a 16:9 crop, which I thought was pretty suitable for this particular image. All right. All right, this is a black and white image that I shot. I'm cheating just a little bit here. This was actually taken maybe about 1.5 years ago, maybe close to 2 years ago. I shot this with the Nikon D7100. And this was at f-stop 8, 1/50th of a second at ISO 100. Now the thing about this was that I shot this with an 8mm lens. I shot this with the Samyang 8mm f-stop 3.5 lens. And basically all that I did was I used the camera in a landscape orientation and set it right on the track itself, and made the exposure that way. And if you look in the corners, because of the curvature of the lens and the wide field of view, you can see that the trees are kind of converging inward, which is a nice effect that I rather like. As far as color was concerned, color didn't really work for this particular image. So what I did was I converted it to black and white. And I thought this worked out pretty well. I brought out the highlights in the background. You can actually see the sun is beginning to set. And there's actually a halo around the sun itself in the upper left-hand corner if you look there. And I thought this was pretty good. I took the image into Lightroom and I used the Dodge tool on the track that's right in the center and lightened that considerably, and gave it a slight vignette and to draw your eyes to the center of the image. And as I said, this still remains one of my favorite images, and I thought I'd share this with you as well. Okay. Now, this next image was actually my very first try at ICM photography. I shot this probably about, maybe 3 months ago. And I had shot some other images earlier that afternoon. I got there maybe about a couple hours before sunset. To give myself a chance to scout around a little bit, and basically some time to wait for the light to get right if it was going to that particular day. Anyway, I was relatively disappointed, as often happens with landscape photography. The light wasn't quite coming off around the time that I was waiting for it, so I began to pack everything up and I started heading back. I had gotten a few shots, nothing special, but a couple of shots prior to that. But just as I was getting ready to leave this particular wooded area, the sun peeked out from the clouds, and I got some beautiful side lighting on these trees as I was leaving. So I pulled out the camera again, and I took this shot. Okay, the settings for this were f-stop 11, and it was a 1 second exposure with a Nikon D800 at ISO 100. And basically, I took the shot, waited just momentarily, and all I did was move the camera upward. And that pretty much gave me the effect that I was looking for. I took the image into Lightroom and, of course, enhanced it. I sharpened it a bit. And I used the HSL slider in Lightroom to enhance the greens. And also, I used the HSL sliders to enhance the orange. And actually, I shifted it more toward magenta. And I thought that gave it a very interesting look. And this is one of my favorite images that I've taken this year as well. Okay, and once again, this was shot with the Nikon D800 at f-stop 13, 1 second exposure at ISO 100. All right, the final image. This is one that I shot 2 weeks ago. This was shot once again with the Nikon D7100, and I used the 8mm lens once again. I took a few photographs earlier. There's actually a stream pretty close to this area, and I took a few shots there. But unfortunately, that particular area is in a depression. It's probably about maybe 10 feet below ground level. And as the sun was setting, I was actually losing the light itself because I was sitting actually too far down for the light to actually hit that area. So basically, I was in the shadows when I was in the stream at this particular time of day. I did get a couple of shots at a higher level that were, okay, nothing great, nothing to write home about, but some decent shots. So I decided to pack it up as usual, and more often than not, when you decide to throw in the towel and go in, the light tends to get good. And this particular day was not an exception. So I immediately pulled out the camera again. I took several shots. I took one in portrait orientation, and I took another one in landscape orientation, which is obviously is what we're looking at right now. And I carefully positioned myself just on the other side of one of the trees, just so I could get a sun star. And actually, I was able to get this at f-stop 5.6. And this was 1/5 of a second at ISO 100. And as I said earlier, this was shot with the Samyang 8mm lens, and which was the equivalent of 12 millimeters on an APS-C sensor camera. So I did the usual things with this. I took it into Lightroom, and I enhanced the greens. Now this particular lens, the Samyang 8mm, reproduces greens extremely well, which is one thing I love about this particular lens. But I enhanced the greens just a little bit more, and I changed the hues just a little bit on the brown leaves that were actually lying on the ground and still on the trees themselves. If you look to the right, you can see that I've enhanced the hue there. Those leaves were actually brown, and I turned them more red. And I just wanted to do something different. I wanted a different visual perspective on this particular day of photography. And that's one thing. If you're having maybe one of those days where you can't exactly find a composition or figure out exactly what to do, try something a little bit different. ICM photography is a good thing, and that can get you out of a little rut, and it can save you in a number of situations where you just can't find anything. And also using a lens with a radical perspective, like an 8mm lens, some type of an ultra wide angle lens, that can give you a different perspective on many of the compositions that you might find. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I would appreciate any feedback that you might have. And hopefully you enjoyed the images and the process that I went through to process them, and my particular mindset when I was taking these particular shots. Well, as always, if you've enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to comment, like, and please subscribe. So, until next time.